Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Senator Todd Young says Indiana could benefit from his bill to boost America's shipbuilding industry. It's called the Ships for America Act, and he says it's modeled after the Chips and Science Act. Young calls our shortage of U.S. flagged merchant vessels a national and economic security issue. He talked to our government reporter, Garrett Berquist.
Now let's bring in Senator Todd Young. Senator, welcome back to the program.
It's good to be with you, Garrett.
So how did the Ships for America Act come about?
Well, we've been working on it for some time. It began as an effort led by my colleague Mark Kelly, Democrat from Arizona. And beginning this year, after the Trump administration really began to formulate its agenda with some specificity, we linked up our legislative effort, which we had already introduced late last year, with the president's executive order. And so the president has made it a real priority to make American ships again. He has detailed the challenges associated with making ships in this country, the strategic importance of getting it done, but he needed some solutions. So we have authorized and funded this very important effort to make sure that America can supercharge its maritime power.
And my understanding is that this act is really targeted more toward our merchant fleet as opposed to the Navy. Why is that important?
Well, it's important because our very way of life, certainly our economic prosperity, is dependent on our ability to move things to and from our shore. Roughly 80% of our imports and exports travel by ship cargo, and most of those ships, the vast majority, are flagged in China or another country. In fact, in the United States, we only have a handful of commercially flagged ships. We have almost no capacity to make merchant ships. China has 5,555 ships, give or take, as of today. The United States has 80 commercial ships. And China is now producing roughly 1,000 ships per year, and the United States only 5. So what we aim to do is unlock more private capital, domestic and foreign capital, to invest in our shipyards across this country, even revitalize some shipyards in the industrial Midwest that haven't been used for generations.
Tell me more about some of those educational partnerships. As, for example, you mentioned community colleges. Potentially this is something we might see at Ivy Tech.
One could imagine someone being trained either for the merchant marine or skilled trades, so that they can help us revitalize our naval power. In our state, we, of course, are the most manufacturing intensive state in the country. We don't build a lot of ships, and although we do build some down on the Ohio River, for example, but we certainly make a lot of steel. Steel will be needed for many of these vessels. And we make a lot of components, including engines. You can imagine maritime engines being made at Cummins and used for all these different ships that are going to be produced here. So we aim to at once create great opportunities, professional opportunities for Hoosiers and other Americans, ensure that our economic security remains whole so that we're not dependent on China and at the mercy of China every time we want to move goods into the country or out of the country.
Is a 25% tax credit for shipyard investments wise given our current financial situation?
Well, it is. It is because this is a national security investment, as I just laid out, and we have to pay a national security premium on different things and incentivize investments into fields that would not otherwise be supported just through consumer choice alone, preparing for a contingency like a long war scenario against the Chinese Communist Party. So we worked with financial experts to ascertain exactly how generous these tax credits should be in order to get the job done, worked with the Trump administration. We came up with a 25% figure, and we think this is appropriate.
President Trump did criticize some aspects of the CHIPS and Science Act, which the Ships for America Act is modeled after. Could that undercut support for this bill?
Absolutely not. I've been working with the president very actively, both on the semiconductor initiative and on the ships initiative. And I think this is, though it's never easy to get things done in Washington these days, this is as poised as any initiative I've ever been associated with for success. We have bipartisan support here in the Senate, also bipartisan support in the House of Representatives. We're working with the President of the United States and his national security team. And more importantly, we've got industry, labor, and the National Security Committee that have all given sanction to the Ships for America Act.
Before we go, I want to ask you about a couple other national security headlines. Do you agree with the decision to remove Mike Waltz as National Security Advisor?
I agree. It's the president's prerogative. The National Security Advisor position is not even Senate confirmed. So this is purely a choice of the president's preferences. The president indicated that he'll be nominating the former National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, to be his new ambassador to the United Nations. And I've got great respect for Mike Waltz. I anticipate supporting him for that position.
Should Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth step down over now multiple reports of his using the Signal app to share classified information?
That too is something that I'm deferring to the president to determine whether or not he still has trust in Mr. Hegseth. I believe that Mr. Hegseth has learned an important lesson about this. I think it does raise questions about whether we should modernize how we deal with classified materials in this country. You know, this idea of going into a secure chamber, and there aren't a lot of them around the United States to review classified materials, doesn't comport with the way most of us run our professional lives these days. We live in an internet-based and distributed sort of economy and society. So should we be coming up with highly secure tools for our leaders to use and for other military personnel that don't require an inconvenient relocation to a far-off facility? I am hopeful that we can get that done in coming years. I've already initiated conversations with some of my colleagues on the intelligence community about that topic.
So would that involve, say, changes or replacements to SIPRNet or some of those other classified networks?
We're in the early stages of looking into this and soliciting ideas from all corners. So maybe Hoosiers will have some ideas.
Senator Todd Young, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Garrett.
All right, coming up, Indiana nonprofits lose a key source of help as the Trump administration defunds AmeriCorps. Welcome back. Indianapolis nonprofits tell us they're scrambling after the Trump administration gutted AmeriCorps. Those cuts affect nonprofits from anti-hunger efforts to medical clinics. News 8's government reporter Garrett Berquist explains how big of a loss this is.
Nonprofits here in Indianapolis tell me those AmeriCorps volunteers played critical roles in reaching those in need. These flyers might not look like much, but leaders of the Gennesaret Free Clinics say they helped increase the number of volunteers for their clinics by nearly 1/3.
We've been able to serve almost twice as many patients since we started with our volunteer coordinator. This has been a huge win for Gennesaret, and the capacity building is something that we wouldn't have been able to achieve without this role.
Kennedy just lost the person who helped her do that. In late April, the Trump administration froze AmeriCorps' funding. President Trump's latest budget proposal eliminates AmeriCorps altogether. AmeriCorps funded 12 volunteers at 11 different organizations in Indianapolis through the nonprofit Public Allies. Public Allies trains people who want to work in the public or nonprofit sector.
We have nonprofits that are already on very tight budgets. They still have meaningful work that they have to do. They have a lot of programs. And so one of the benefits is being able to host an AmeriCorps member at a minimal cost to them, but be able to really build capacity, whether it be building out new programming, building out sustainable practices.
I'm, sort of out of a job. The little living stipend that I was getting sort of comes out to maybe $8 an hour. That's gone. So I really don't know what my, how I'm going to be able to pay for housing in like 3 weeks.
Finch provided data analytics for Pack Away Hunger. He's one of 2 volunteers who started working for them in September.
You immediately start thinking about, what events are going to get delayed that's going to get food out the door to people that, need that food.
Logan says nonprofits such as Pack Away Hunger and Gennesaret will have to discontinue the operations those AmeriCorps personnel provided. They won't have to shut down entirely, but she and Kennedy both say it will hurt their ability to help those in need.
That means that without our public ally, we will not have the resources to be able to continue this outreach, especially with the volunteers in our dental clinics.
Logan says you can help by donating your time or your money to your favorite nonprofits. In Indianapolis, I'm Garrett Bergquist for Wish TV and WishTV.com.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team on how Indiana might benefit from the Ships for America Act and a groundbreaking in the controversial LEAP district. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in 2 members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Tom John, Democrat Lindsay Haake. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Let's talk about that interview that we heard with Senator Todd Young. Tom, why should Hoosiers care about where this is?
Well, for one thing, we have to protect our supply chain. We have to look at what our status is internationally. And that means being able to actually ship goods is essential to whether we're exporting our goods, whether it be farm products or otherwise, or whether we're importing goods we need. But then you bring it in more closely, as the senator said, steel is a big part of things that we do in this state. That's important. We have Cummins, that is a large engine manufacturer. We have a lot of opportunities where this bill will put Hoosiers to work, but also more importantly, secure our national future and logistics.
Lindsay, I'll turn it to you. I would imagine you agree with some of that, but what are some of the pitfalls as well?
Sure. So obviously and if you've ever sat through a maritime law course back in college for some of us,
riveting stuff.
Man, I'm telling you, you'll need a few espressos for that one. But the Jones Act, it's been law for over 100 years, and something tells me that, and I know there's bipartisan agreement for this, I know it has been tried before. This is not the first time we've tried essentially to reform, I'll use that word, although that's not a slam, trying to be bipartisan here, because I do agree, it's a great move for Indiana specifically, as Tom already pointed out. We've got those manufacturers here, we've got those jobs that need to be supported 100%. But the fallback is essentially the concern that you've got this law that's been on the books for over 100 years. You've essentially built into the system protectionism already for the shipbuilding industry, and that's not working. And we need to help it more. How is that going to work out? Right. So I support it. I want to see it succeed, but I'm not yet sure if it will.
Tom, good to see some bipartisanship though, right?
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully you will see more of that. I mean, we'll see how far we can get Lindsay on the Trump agenda. But there are a lot of things that I think people have agreed there are problems, and there have been disagreement how to settle them. It's great in this particular issue, and frankly, Todd Young is one of the great leaders in the Senate as far as being bipartisan, whether you go back to the CHIPS Act that he had sponsored with Majority Leader Schumer. There are a variety of places where he is somebody who I think is at the great edge of leading what's good for our society and our country and our state.
To Tom's point, Lindsay, he has done this before.
He has, yes. I think I still need some time before I'm willing to shove him into, say, for example, a Nunn-Lugar type partnership that we've experienced before, as honestly, Indiana leaders have been known to do. And so obviously, it was not that long we lost Senator Lugar, but also only 13 years ago, last night, that Senator Lugar lost that primary, just going back a little history for you. But yeah, I think we've got some work to go. I'm willing to give him a fair shake, and that's speaking as a prior communications director for his opponent in last year's cycle.
Fair enough. Okay, so let's turn it stateside now. This week, Governor Mike Braun, as you guys know, joined officials from Lilly to break ground on the Lilly Medicine Foundry. This came after just basically a week after Braun ordered an audit of the IEDC. So is there a disconnect, Lindsay, between maybe those two actions? And should there maybe be a pause on all of this?
Oh man, yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been it's no secret I have some opposition to the LEAP district only because of, well, water. You know,
Right.
a lot of this production that's coming into the LEAP district requires a large amount of water, and it some of those manufacturing processes are not the cleanest also. And so I have concerns that come from not just the shovels in the ground, which is great to see. I get it, bring investment to Indiana, but let's do it responsibly, and let's make sure it's a responsible effort with taxpayer dollars. You've also had a lot of legislators who've tried to talk about this at the State House in terms of a transparency and accountability for these types of investments, and we've seen those bills die.
Right.
You know, Spencer Deary had one last year, that was crickets, and this year again as well. So I'm a little concerned. I would share that oversight concern as well that the legislators have in just months past. We had sine die not even a month ago.
Tom, your thoughts?
Well, I think I don't see any disconnect there. The fact is the Lilly foundry is going to bring a lot of high-paying jobs. Eli Lilly is such an essential part of our community and has been for over a century. This is a great thing that they're investing here and not investing in other places. And so for the governor to celebrate that, I think is a good thing. And as far as the audit, a lot of times when you have a leadership transition, you will have audits, and it's good practice. And oftentimes audits come back and it's like, everything's fine.
Right.
So I think it's good practice for them to be auditing and looking what's happened before, but it's also great for him to support a great community asset in Eli Lilly and this growth and the number of jobs that'll come out.
Could you do that? Could you support it though and also say, hey, let's just hold on a minute here until this audit is done? Is that possible, you think?
I think that that's dangerous because you may lose the investment here. You never know what could happen with regard to that, how this fits into the greater scope of what Eli Lilly's trying to do. And do you really want to do that to one of the important community members that you have and all those potential jobs?
Okay, well, we'll see what happens with that. The Union School Corporation, as you guys very well know, suing the state over the property tax cut bill. That's because the bill included language to dissolve that school corporation. Tom, where do we go from here?
Well, it'll be an interesting
one of these
case.
Small school districts, right?
Ultimately, it'll come down to, is this special legislation warranted? Because that's what this is special legislation under the Indiana Constitution. I haven't looked at the lawsuit, but I suspect that's what it is. But, you know, this ultimately is what happens sometimes at the legislature. That's a largely local issue that ended up in a statewide bill. And so you may have a legal case that goes along with it. And to be honest, I don't know enough about the facts to know how it'll turn out.
Right.
But this happens where late in the game, things come in, and oftentimes they're bespoke to a particular area.
Lindsay, this is one of the fears with this property tax bill.
Yeah, you know, unlike Tom, I'm not an attorney, but I also have not reviewed the legislation or the litigation yet, so I've not seen the basis of the complaint. However, this is not the first item that's been brought to the courts from this past legislative session regarding special legislation. It's not. And so watching all of this, and the first one I'm referring to, of course, is the budget bill with the component for the Indiana University trustees. That was also under the special legislation. Now, like I said, I haven't reviewed that litigation yet, but I think it's important to remember here that we have uprooted a scenario where a lot of kids aren't going to have the system they've had right now and for years past to learn.
Right.
And critics will say that this school corporation was a failing school corporation and that it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do in bringing our highest and best from Hoosier kids. And that's just not how you should operate. We should not decimate a program and an entire school district. You should invest in it. Ask the Department of Education for some help. You can do that.
Right.
And they did not. So I'm wondering where the roost is on this. You know, the chickens are going to come home on this one. And I'm kind of wondering, you know, J.D. Prescott had some rough comments from his constituents at this public meeting
Certainly
that was
did.
a few weeks ago.
All right, we'll see where we go from here. Thank you so much for being here. Lindsay, by the way, happy Mother's Day.
Thank you so much. And
Absolutely.
to all mother figures, happy Mother's
No
Day
doubt.
to you.
Good to see you both. Thank you. We will be right back. All right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. Be sure to check out our all-new All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Happy Mother's Day and have a great rest of your weekend.